Hey everybody, how's it going? Often on this channel I focus on right to repair from the perspective of a consumer electronics repair shop. However, this is also a problem for people all over the country in all different fields, often farmers who want to be able to repair their own tractors. There are agricultural right to repair bills coming up in Nebraska and Montana, and I want to discuss this amazing piece done by United States Public Interest Research Group, because what it does is it goes over every single anti-repair lobbyist point and just completely destroys it. It explains why this is a problem. It gives specific anecdotes from specific people that shows how this has caused them specific harm, and it goes over every point they make about emissions and intellectual property theft and source code, and completely debunks the bullshit, which is great. And the thing that drives me nuts with regards to this stuff is if I do an instructional video on repair, like nobody watches it. You'll get 10, 15,000 people watch. I do a video just on my little camera saying, "Hey, look at this stupid thing happening in New York." It's like 500,000 views. And if I do a video on, yelling, angry New Yorker, rah, 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 against something that some company has done that's anti-right to repair, it gets 2 to 4 million views. And when people that wear suits and ties, that write proper reports, that with proper citations, that look professional and everything talk about it, it gets, drumroll please, 42 views. Life's not fair. It really isn't. And I'm trying to kind of make it a little bit more fair with this video. I want to highlight the amazing work that the people at United States Public Interest Research Group have done, even if only 42 people have watched it so far. More than 42 people should be aware of this. Most certainly, the politicians in Nebraska and Montana that are going to be deciding on these right to repair bills. And I do hope that voters in Nebraska and Montana reach out to their local legislators. I will include information in the pinned comment on how to do so with this type of information. This is not something that I can really do with the way everything is in the country right now. The last people that legislators in Montana and Nebraska probably want to hear from is a dude in Brooklyn, New York. It's just, they don't care. They don't care what I have to say. They care what their local voters have to say, which is why I hope I have people watching from Montana and Nebraska. Anyway, I want to get to this, and I want to read this amazing piece of research that they put together here. And it's also very, very well cited. It says here, "Deer in the headlights, how software that farmers cannot access has become necessary to tractor repair." So let's just go over to some of the parts that I noticed that were the most interesting. It says here, introduction, waiting for a fix. Extreme rains early in the 2019 season forced Jared Wilson, a Kansas-based farmer, to push his operation back 2 months. Luckily for Wilson, he has a John Deere 4930 fertilizer spreader, which can cover as much as 700 to 800 acres per day. He said that capacity should have allowed him to catch up despite of difficult conditions. During a routine hydraulic system check before starting the work, the hydraulic filter housing blew. Initial troubleshooting made it apparent that a lack of hydraulic pressure was preventing the rear spinners from operating properly, a problem that needed to be fixed. To fix it, Wilson said he needed to test the hydraulic pressures, a process that requires a diagram illustrating how the hydraulic system works, as well as access to the diagnostic software that might help identify the issue. According to Repair.org Executive Director Gay Gordon Byrne, John Deere has a track record of refusing to provide this information to farmers or independent repair shops, and Wilson said he could not access it. Therefore, Wilson didn't see any other choice besides to take it to the dealership or a John Deere authorized technician. When he did, he says the machine sat there, full of fertilizer, for 32 days. And let's face it, any farmer can tell you that if you delay a process of theirs by 32 days, you fuck up everything for the entire year. During that process, Wilson did what he could to speed up the process. He said he called daily for progress updates and visited with the dealership manager in person twice. He also considered other options. The next closest dealership was an estimated 80 miles away, so Wilson could have loaded the 4930 truck onto a truck, 4930 onto a truck, and hauled it that distance. But that would incur expensive hauling fees and the need to physically shovel out the fertilizer loaded in the machine to make it sure it was light enough to load in the truck. Left without a good alternative, Wilson decided to wait it out. Eventually, the problem was identified and fixed. The culprit was a blown mechanical valve that Wilson believes he could have repaired himself if armed with schematics and diagnostic information. Instead, he was left feeling helpless and frustrated. Frustration aside, the time that Wilson lost had a real impact on his crop. Because his margin structure was already so tight, he could not afford to put out much fertilizer in the first place. Nonetheless, He said he lost 2 to 3 days of planting, an estimated loss of 30,000 to 60,000 by his count. My margins look negative to start the year, Wilson said. People bend down and pick up pennies where I'm from. I just don't understand why I can't have access to the same things the field technicians have. Bells and whistles don't matter when the machine won't work. Even though modern farming technology provides new conveniences and functionalities, farmers still pride themselves in being able to come up with ingenious and creative solutions to the problems that come along with their profession. Farmers' inability to get hold of the diagnostic tools they require to fix their tractors has caused some to opt for machines without the new technology. Andrew McHarg of Chapman, Nebraska, has seen firsthand how modern software can get in the way of daily operations. When error codes from a bulky emission system sent McHarg's 2014 tractor, which cost him $300,000 when he bought it new, into limp mode in the middle of planting season, his machine was down for an entire week. Over the years he used the machine, McHarg spent $8,000 at the dealership periodically clear these error codes before eventually buying an older tractor without these issues, costing an additional $160,000. As of March 2020, McHarg has been unable to sell the 2014 tractor because nobody wants this shit. Andrew's frustration doesn't stem from the emissions controls themselves. He was frustrated by his inability to fix the problems associated with them. The whole disconnect is about who really owns the tractor, he said. If it's mine, I should be able to modify and fix it myself. There's no reason we shouldn't have a repair system exactly like the auto industry's. The comparison to the auto industry is particularly apt. Much like tractors, car emissions are regulated by the EPA. Federal regulations require auto manufacturers to hit certain greenhouse gas emission standards, depending on the model year. Once the car is sold or leased, many states require drivers to maintain their vehicles such that they continue to hit target emissions levels. Failure to meet standards in these states can prevent the driver from legally operating their car. Beyond the point of sale, the responsibility to ensure that an auto meets federal regulations falls on the driver, not Ford, GMC, Toyota, Hyundai, or whomever manufactured it. And this is an important point because what they'll say is, we can't help you fix your device because we need to make sure that it meets emission standards. And as they say, that responsibility falls on the driver, the owner, not the person who manufactured it. It only makes sense that the person who bears the responsibility of ongoing compliance should be able to fix their machine as necessary to meet the standards. American car owners can therefore repair their own machines, hire one of the 180,000 independent auto repair businesses in the country, or turn to the dealer to do so on their behalf. Whichever they choose is up to them. In the world of farm equipment, however, manufacturers like John Deere restrict consumer choice. When the software emissions controls built into the tractor or combine detect non-compliance, the immobilizer is activated, throwing the machine into limp mode and rendering it essentially unusable until the problem is resolved and the machine reset. But the average law-abiding farmer who wants to protect the environment, grow food to stock grocery store shelves, and provide a livelihood for her family does not have access to the diagnostic codes to identify the problem, nor the software needed to clear the error and return the machine to use once the problem is resolved. She, like McHarg, is reliant on the dealer to do these things and subject to whatever fees they may charge. And over here, there's an aside. The road to right to repair started in your car. Cars first saw an influx of software following the passage of the 1990 Clean Air Act. This policy required automobile manufacturers to install onboard diagnostic systems in all cars to identify engine or other problems that led to higher emissions of greenhouse gases. The effort was extremely successful. The Auto Alliance bragged that a Washington to Dallas journey in a 2000 car is less polluting than a Baltimore to Washington commute in a 1966 car. But it also created an opportunity for auto manufacturers to restrict repair to benefit their dealerships. Unlike strictly mechanical systems, which a consumer or independent mechanic can physically disassemble and troubleshoot, computational systems require diagnostic tools. Many consumers and independent repair shops could not get access to these tools or the associated repair manuals, meaning a driver's only choice was to take their car to the dealer for certain repairs. In defense of this practice, manufacturers have claimed this information as intellectual property. In 2012, the state of Massachusetts put automotive right to repair on the ballot. The measure passed with an overwhelming 86% of Bay Staters calling for access to the tools and information for independent mechanics. Following the passage of this referendum, all major auto manufacturers signed a memorandum of understanding that extended the results in Massachusetts to the entire country. This is important because many people will say this needs to be done at the federal level. However, consumer protection initiatives, and if you own a tractor, you are a consumer of that tractor, you are a consumer, this is consumer protection legislation. Lots of consumer protection legislation typically happens at the state, is the state's responsibility, and also when it does happen in the state, it winds up passing throughout the entire country, because most car companies are not going to specifically sell a car in a different manner in Massachusetts than they do in every other part of the country, especially if it's just basic right to repair shit that they should have been doing anyway. So this Massachusetts right to repair bill that passed in 2012 has not caused every car company in the United States to decide we're not going to sell in Massachusetts, and it did not result in cars exploding in Massachusetts, cars going Skynet in Massachusetts. So this has already passed in some way, shape, or form in a manner that affects far more consumers than it does with a tractor right to repair bill, because more people in the United States are automobile drivers than are farmers that drive a tractor. Some farmers have decided to avoid software on machines altogether. Machinery Pete, a used farm equipment marketplace that has been tracking and recording tractor auction prices since the late 1980s, has noted the comparatively high prices that 30-year-old machines are catching today. According to Machinery Pete, the highest price a roughly 30-year-old John Deere tractor sold for in 1989 was just over $7,200 in 2019 dollars. In 2019, a 1989 John Deere tractor sold for $71,000. So this is funny. The whole idea is that we need, what if they modify the emission systems and don't, and screw with them so that it ruins the environment? Well, what you're actually doing by not allowing people to service the emission systems in these modern tractors on their own is you're encouraging them to buy 30 and 40-year-old tractors that just don't have them at all, that pollute way more than the newer tractors, even when that stuff is not fixed perfectly, which is insane. Farmers are seeking these older models not only because of their sturdy design, but also because they are easy to repair. With new machines ranging from $150,000 to $250,000 and dealer labor rates as high as $150 per hour, this makes simple financial sense to Chris Foland of Minnesota. The main reason we buy older equipment is to make money, he said. Older equipment is a way to reduce your cost per bushel to become more profitable. If Foland is correct, that means that the innovations touted by equipment manufacturers are actually adding to costs and making food more expensive. Tractor hackers. Some farmers who have chosen to continue using more modern machines have turned to another unexpected source for help: crack software from Eastern Europe. Kyle Schwarting of Lincoln, Nebraska is one of those farmers turned hackers. When Schwarting's tractor broke down, he had two options. He could either pay an estimated $2,000 to load the machine in a truck and haul it to the dealership, plus the cost of repair and lost time, or he could find a creative way to solve the problem. This drove Schwarting to the internet. Through invite-only, paid online forums, this is kind of like the equivalent of... This is kind of like the equivalent of a MacBook repair guy paying to go to VinaFix or something to, buy a schematic that they found from God knows where, instead of actually being able to go to the manufacturer. He was able to buy a pirated version of John Deere's Service Advisor, which is used for the issue diagnosis and recalibration. Farmers can buy this program, as well as John Deere payload files that directly program certain parts of the machine, John Deere electronic data link drivers that enable a computer to communicate with the tractor, physical cables to connect the tractors to the computer, and more through forums like those Schwarting accessed. Much of this software is pirated in Eastern Europe and then sold to American farmers. Kyle's behavior might appear to be an illegal violation of the Digital Millennium Copyright Act, but in 2015, the Library of Congress Copyright Office adopted the following exemption to Section 1201 of the DMCA to allow farmers to circumvent agricultural equipment manufacturers' digital locks for the purposes of repair and modification. Computer programs that are contained in and control the functioning of motorized land vehicles, such as a mechanized agricultural vehicle, except for computer programs primarily designed for the control of telematics or entertainment systems for such vehicle, when circumvision is a necessary step undertaken by the authorized owner of the vehicle to allow the diagnosis, repair, or lawful modification of a vehicle function, and where such circumvention does not constitute a violation of applicable law, including without limitation regulations promulgated by the Department of Transportation or Environmental Protection Agency. AKA, the DMCA is one of the worst pieces of legislation in our lifetime that tries to limit the freedoms of Americans in every single way, shape, or form when it comes to actually working on the products that you effing own. Whether it is being able to fix your own tractor or being able to take a $20 movie that you purchased on a DVD and rip it so that you could watch it on your phone. You're not allowed to do that. That's illegal. The DMCA is a horrible piece of legislation. But even under our horrible piece of legislation that is the DMCA, there is an exemption carved out so that people who make the food that we all eat can actually fix the devices that they own. Ideally, in an ideal world, we would not have pieces of legislation that limit the freedom of you to do what you want with what you purchase to the extent that you need to cut out exemptions for the ability to fix your own products. but they do exist. So this is a very important point to bring up, and this is also why United States Public Interest Research Group is awesome, because they created this report. They have this put there in clear print so that when you show it to a legislator and the anti-repair lobbyist says this goes against the DMCA, you can go, nah, it doesn't. You can point to the point in this report where they point out that there's an exemption, and it also includes all relevant citations so that you're not stuck there just looking like you didn't do your homework. They did their homework, and this is why it's so depressing that only 42 people viewed the video. And hopefully more people are familiar with this, and more people send this to their legislators and speak with them and educate them on this now that they are armed with this document. Analysis. Farmers and other advocates across the country have supported right to repair reforms to remove repair restrictions on agricultural equipment. This legislation calls for open access to the parts, tools, embedded software, and diagnostic information that is required to fix a piece of equipment. Bills have been introduced in 32 states and counting, with each introduction a furious debate has followed. Opponents of right to repair reforms, such as the Association of Equipment Manufacturers and the Equipment Dealers Association, argue that the policy is an attempt to force manufacturers to turn over intellectual property in the form of source code. They also claim that advocates seek to gain unfettered access to the embedded code in the agricultural equipment, which could be dangerous and harm both farmers and the general public. Additionally, right to repair legislation could give third-party shops the ability to illegally bypass emission standards set by the federal government. They say that this would risk the safety, durability, and environmental sustainability of farm equipment. Manufacturer claims about the code that farmers and advocates seek, the access they desire, and the functionalities it would enable are disingenuous, if not downright fallacious, said Gay Gordon Byrne, executive director of Repair.org. To parse this, it is helpful to first discuss what is actually included in right to repair legislation actually calls. The Repair Association, a trade association consisting of repair technicians from a range of fields and a leader in the right to repair movement, has model legislation on which many of the different state bills are based. Now, honestly, this is a point that I really hope that USpirg takes and puts into its own specific document. I like this thing. This is a great report. It really is. But I think one thing that's going to be needed is here's what you're going to hear the lobbyists say, here's why it's bullshit. Just spread out like that. 'Cause a few weeks ago, I did a video where there was this one, the Entertainment Software Association, I think, they put out no, it wasn't ESA, it was someone else, I forget who it was. But they had a list of right to repair myths, facts, and that was just like that. And I think that USpirg would benefit from having a document that just said myths, facts, BS lobbyist crap, reality. So that when the senator reads it, and then he actually, just this basic little, flashcard presentation, and then he hears from the anti-right to repair lobbyist, he already knows what BS he's going to be presented with, and he knows why it's BS immediately. The template right to repair bill makes no mention of source code, but does call for the manufacturer to make embedded software for the purposes of diagnosis, maintenance, or repair to any independent repair provider or to the owner of digital electronic equipment manufactured by or on behalf of or sold by the original equipment manufacturer. Such language sets forth clear boundaries and therefore does not imply unfettered access. This is an important point because this is what happened with in Maryland, and it really, really pissed me off. There was this one person. I'm trying to let's see if I can find his name here, who completely ignored pretty much everything we hear. Here we go. C.T. Wilson. It was C.T. Wilson in Maryland. So he said, I can't believe that you guys are asking for source code. This bill asks for source code. Why should people have to give up their source code? The bill doesn't ask for source code, and we actually made a point specifically of saying that we're not asking for source code. And then C.T. Wilson got up there and said, well, he was one of the senators or no, it wasn't a senator. He was a representative in Maryland, said, why should they have to give you your source code? Which makes it obvious that not only are they just not listening at all, they just don't care at all. They don't care about reality. And one of the things that they're pointing out here is that nobody's asking for source code. They're asking for embedded code, which is a totally different thing. So for instance, let's say on a MacBook, there's the system management controller. I don't want the source code, which would allow me to, let's say, crack everything in there and allow Mac OS X to run on a non-Apple device. I want the embedded code, which is just the code that was on the SMC chip to begin with, so that when the SMC dies and can't read the battery, I can allow that MacBook to read the battery again. And one of the things they point out here is that taking embedded code and turning it into source code is virtually impossible. Like, you're more likely to have 1,000 monkeys write the work of Shakespeare. But this is a point that's commonly used, which is that the right to repair advocates are asking for source code. which they are not. None of the bills say they want access to source code. None of the bills can be interpreted as we want access to source code, but this is a common point that's used, and then we often hit a brick wall because the legislators actually believe it, which drives me nuts, but it does wind up being the case. And this is something that was discussed in this video here. I went over this. It was this guy over here is actually Seth Howard, not C.T. Wilson. But in the bill, in this video, you see C.T. Wilson talking about how we're asking for source code when we're literally not asking for source code. Anyway, back to this. The template right to repair bill makes no mention of source code, but does call for the manufacturer to make available embedded software for the purposes of diagnosis, maintenance, or repair to any independent repair provider, or to the owner of digital electronic equipment manufactured by or on behalf of or sold by the original equipment manufacturer. Such language sets forth clear boundaries and therefore does not imply unfettered access. What, then, is the difference between embedded software, which the bill calls for, and source code, which opponents claim advocates are really after? There is a world of difference. Source code is compiled into embedded code, a process that makes it unreadable by humans. Source code is instructions written by software engineers in a coding language like C or Java that tell the machine what to do. Any person who understands the programming language can read it, meaning that source code can be modified and put to use in a competing form. This means an agricultural equipment company that steals a competing manufacturer's source code can modify it to work in their machines, a possibility that manufacturers are looking to avoid. However, an important change occurs when the source code is compiled and turned into embedded code. This translates into human-legible coding language into computer-legible ones and zeros. In a combine, a farmer interacts with this embedded code through controls in the cabin, which execute the embedded code to display a selectable button or list of settings on their screen. New tractor computers, ECUs, come without software and have to be programmed before they can operate. Access to embedded software would allow a farmer to program new parts, giving him the same access to a routine process that dealerships enjoy. But translating this information back into the source code originally written by the software engineers is essentially impossible. That's why Apple, HP, and others freely make embedded code available for their products in the form of firmware updates. Because right to repair legislation only mandates access to the embedded code required for diagnosis, maintenance, or repair, and not the uncompiled source code behind it, there is no additional risk of source code leaking, which is very, very important. Because what anti-repair lobbyists like to do is they like to say they're asking for source code, which we're not. What they're doing is they're relying on the fact that many politicians are not very technologically or computer literate. Again, this is something that I've pointed out before. You can just watch the hearings on the social media giants last year. Our politicians don't even know the difference between Facebook and Twitter, much less source code versus embedded code. So what they do to make it easy for themselves is they'll just come up with a fallacious argument that they know that the politician listening to is not qualified to understand or be able to refute, and that just enough to make them say, oh, okay, I get where you're coming from, and then move on. Which is why it's important that people like us reach out to our legislators and let them know why it's BS, particularly people who live in Montana and Nebraska. Because, again, the last person a politician in Montana or Nebraska probably wants to hear from is someone who lives in Brooklyn, New York. So, please, those of you who watch this stuff, who live in Montana and Nebraska, I will leave info in the pinned comment on how to reach out. Repair is not tampering. The other concern raised by groups like AEM and EDA is that providing access to embedded software and other diagnostic information would enable illegal tampering and risk the safety, durability, and environmentally sustainability of farm equipment. Our analysis explored below shows that right to repair does not change the fact that subverting environmental controls is illegal, nor do repair resources included in model legislation allow for this illegal activity. Title 40 of the Code of Federal Regulation, which is enforced by Environmental Protection Agency, states, tampering. You may not remove or render inoperative any device or element of design installed on or in engines equipment in compliance with the regulations prior to its sale and delivery to the ultimate purchaser. You also may not knowingly remove or render inoperative any such device or element of design after such sale and delivery to the ultimate purchaser. This prohibition does not apply in any of the following situations. You need to repair the engine/equipment and you restore it to its proper functioning when the repair is complete. You need to modify the engine/equipment to respond to a temporary emergency and you restore it to proper functioning as soon as possible. It is notable that the EPA regulation carves out exemptions for repair and emergencies. By preventing farmers from fixing their own equipment, manufacturers go further than required by law and limit emergency capabilities, potentially creating a different kind of safety concern. But nothing in right to repair legislation suggests that farmers would be able to remove or render inoperative any device or element of design that is installed to abide by safety and environmental regulations. What the bill does require is for manufacturers to make available any special documentation, tools, and parts needed to reset an electronic security lock or function when disabled in the course of diagnosis, maintenance, or repair of the equipment. That means that a farmer would be able to find a problem, fix it, and then turn off the error code that indicated the issue, allowing the machine to return to full capacity. This allows for authorization of proper repair, but it does not allow for environmental or safety overrides. Software locks in tractors work as follows. A sensor that forms part of a control system fails, indicating a problem in need of repair. This prompts an error message to be delivered to the equipment operator, activates the immobilizer, and puts the machine in a limp mode. Certain software is then needed as a key to the digital lock so that the farmer can diagnose the exact issue, approve replacement parts as necessary, and then indicate that the repair has been completed. This takes the tractor out of limp mode and allows the farmer to go back to her business. If the repair is conducted improperly, or a given emissions or safety control is not met, the given control system would again fail, starting the process over. A machine is not fully functional until a proper repair is made and all environmental and safety requirements are met. So it says over here, what does it take to repair farm equipment? Machine is running properly. Mechanical or software failure occurs. Emissions or safety control codes engaged. Immobilizer activates, putting the machine in a limp mode. Now, at this point, every step after this is only something a manufacturer authorized technician or dealer can do. Software key entered to access diagnostic tools. Diagnostic tools help identify problem. Necessary mechanical or software repair is made. Typo. Software key authorizes repair and clears error codes. Also, if Nathan Proctor is watching this, can you add an R to repairs here before I edit the PDF link that I'm going to be giving people? Just edit this PDF to have an R there before I tell everybody to start sending this to legislators. I'm probably going to forget to message him after this video, so that's why I'm including it in the video. There is a clear difference between resetting an error code and ignoring or overriding safety codes. According to agricultural repair experts, overriding emissions or safety controls requires modification tools, not the tools used for diagnosis and repair that right to repair legislation provides. To override these controls, a farmer would have to first erase the operating system present on the machine, as they cannot access nor remove the included control systems. They would then have to upload new modified software that either does not have emissions and safety controls or allows a farmer to ignore them. This is illegal, as it violates the tampering provision laid out in Title 40 of the Code of Federal Regulations. As long as a farmer uses the software that the manufacturer provides, they are unable to bypass environmental or safety regulations, which is important here. Let me repeat that. As long as a farmer uses the software that the manufacturer provides, they are unable to bypass environmental or safety regulations, proving that lobbyist point BS. Right to repair legislation, which provides farmers with access to diagnostic information and the software keys available to manufacturer authorized technicians, just allows us to fix our broken tractors, said Nebraska Farm Bureau member Willie Cade. By the way, the Nebraska Farm Bureau voted in favor of right to repair 176-1 over a year ago. It does not allow any foul play. Financial incentives for limiting repair. Let's dig into the part that is really causing this to not get passed. By digging deeper into each of these arguments, it becomes clear that the concerns of the groups like AEM and EDA are unfounded. What can be shown, however, is that manufacturers like John Deere are making money off of their current repair monopoly. Company filings have pointed to trends that services and repair have been as much as 3 to 6 times as profitable as new equipment sales, and they provide a citation. This is beautiful. Thank you, USpirg. This is awesome stuff. They actually provide a citation for every single thing here so that you can point it out to your senator or representative. For John Deere and its dealerships. For 2013 and 2019, annual sales of parts increased by 22% to $6.7 billion. Meanwhile, annual sales of equipment fell by 19% to $23.7 billion, showing you that if their sales of equipment are decreasing, then they need to make their money somewhere else. In the infinite growth paradigm, if they can't make money selling you stuff, they need to make money off of you fixing the device that you have. They can't have you doing it. They need to be the ones doing it. It begs the question, by resisting calls for access to repair information, are manufacturers and dealers trying to protect their customers and the environment, or are they protecting their bottom line? Awesome. Conclusion. Farmers need access to tools necessary to repair their tractors themselves. As shown by this report and our analysis, the increased presence of software in agricultural equipment has allowed manufacturers like John Deere to take control of the repair process at the expense of the equipment owner. The creation of software locks and keys required to authorize repair severely limits farmers and independent repair shops' ability to fix broken farm equipment themselves. Groups like AEM and EDA have responded to calls for the right to repair by rolling out their own preemptive compromise measures called right to repair solutions. In their statement of principles, they commit to providing access to things like manuals, onboard diagnostics, and more, for tractors and combines put into service on or after January 1st, 2021. But their proposal falls short in a few key ways. First, there is no guarantee that the tools that are provided will be made available at an affordable price. Manufacturers in other industries like medical equipment have offered trainings required to get access to service information for as much as 80% of the original price of the device. That will be a hefty price to pay on combines that can cost upwards of $500,000 and may need to be replaced in as soon as 1 to 3 years for bigger farmers. Sheer cost can effectively prevent the independent repair access promised by AEM and EDA. The AEM EDA outline also refuses to permit consumers to reset and mobilize their system or security-related controls. Without these capabilities, farmers will still be beholden to manufacturers and their affiliated dealerships to authorize repairs and get back to work. Again, a farmer's right to repair is withheld. A third issue is that tractors and combines put into use before 2021 are not a part of the manufacturer's commitment. This creates an orphan fleet of farm equipment whose owners still cannot repair their own tractors. Smaller farmers, who can use their combines for 15 to 20 years, are the most likely to get hurt in the process. Finally, while AEM and EDA members have pledged to meet the standards they set for themselves, there is no guarantee that they will follow through and no opportunity for farmer recourse should they fail to give up to their promise. The manufacturer's commitment is about stall tactics, not solutions, said Cade. Farmers deserve better than these half measures. They deserve the right to repair. He's from the Nebraska Farm Bureau, which, again, voted 176 to 1 in favor of right to repair. I'd really like to know who the one is. A real solution would give farmers unrestricted access to the same tools that the dealers have. These are not tools that will allow farmers to override safety or emissions controls, nor will they lead to encroachment on intellectual property. They will, however, provide farmers with what they need to diagnose, calibrate, authorize, and perform repairs. All of this should be provided at a fair and reasonable price. Manufacturers should adjust their plans to include those measures. If they fail to do so, legislators should enact policies such as right to repair reforms to make sure that farmers can fix their own equipment. And over here, you have a list of all the citations, and it is beautiful. You can go through every single one of the citations over here and see what it is that they were referring to. It's good stuff, very good stuff. This is a great document. The one thing that I think they could do, and again, this is just me being a nitpicky asshole, is have a specific fact sheet that says, this is what the lobbyist will say. This is why it bullshit. This is 23 pages, and a lot of people are not going to read 23 pages. So if you had like a one-page sheet of like abbreviated thing lobbyists will say, why it's bullshit. Abbreviated thing lobbyists will say, why it's bullshit, would be amazing. But hopefully more people know who the United States Public Interest Research Group is at this point. Hopefully more people will find stuff like this. And again, when you are saying, Lewis, I don't know, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do? What you can do, you can contact your senator, your representative, your congressperson, and say, I support right to repair. You could give them a very short, one-paragraph don't write them 6 pages, because if you do, you may not read it. One paragraph thing that says, here's why right to repair is important. Here's why I support this bill. Here's why you should. And if you want information or citations on why this is important, then here's a document that I think you should read. And then you attach this document where someone else has done all the research for you and done all the citations for you, so that when you write that letter, you don't seem like some random hack. You actually sound like you know your stuff. That's what these people are here for. That's what they do. And it really does make me sad to see content like this get less than 42 views when it's this well done. So, round of applause for United States Public Interest Research Group and everybody involved in creating this document and making it what it is. Over here, it says it was written by Kevin O'Reilly, right to repair advocate, and it also has a list of acknowledgments over here for all the people that helped and giving information and all of that stuff. So that's it for today. As always, I hope you learned something. Again, I'll leave some information in the pinned comment over there for people who are in Montana and Nebraska on what it is they can do to help to get this passed. Again, to be clear, this does not help when it comes to electronics right to repair. It doesn't help me get an ISL 9240 or a CD 3217 or to be able to fix the products I work on, but it helps people in a sister industry help them fix the products that they work on. I'm not only about right to repair passing if it benefits me. I'm about right to repair as a principle. So even if it has no effect on me or my industry, I would still like to see it move forward, because the basic idea that you should be able to work on the products that you own, repair the products that you paid for, that to me is just a basic universal principle. And even if this bill is going to have absolutely nothing to do with me, I still would like to see progress made there. Because you have to keep in mind, the more that these bills pass and we don't see things, like tractors going Skynet and running over farmers and shit like that, the easier it is for us to make the argument that this is a good thing. That's it for today. And as always, I hope you learned something. I'll see you all in the next video. Bye now.